Welcome to episode 16 of the Family Podcast Network, helping you work with your tough kids and even those that aren't. Coming at you from Tuscola, Texas, home and headquarters of the Family Podcast Network. I'm your host, Trey Gibson. Well, today, I'll be honest, guys, I kind of lamented. I have a list of topics that I want to go over with you guys. That's just a sundry list that's absolutely huge right now. And I really kind of wrestled today over what did I want to talk to you guys about. I really went back and forth. I even sat down. I even asked my wife, Corey, what do you think? And finally I realized there's one particular one that just has been gnawing at me to get to. And I didn't have it planned until much later down the line, but we need to start it today for whatever reason. And I want to talk to you guys a little bit today about setting family rules. This is one of the number one things that I've seen families really wrestle with. Setting rules in such a way that when they enforce them, etc., kids do it. How do we set up rules in our family? Here's the next big question that most parents don't stop to ask themselves, and I didn't either for a long time. But why? Why do we set particular rules? Now, I'm not questioning why we have rules in general. Y'all have heard me from my previous podcast. I believe that as human nature, we need boundaries. But why is it that we have certain rules that we have in our household? We're going to talk today about why we make up rules, the reason behind them, and why most kids are so freaking confused by the rules that we come up with. They don't follow them. And then we get frustrated as though that's an issue with them being rebellious and whatnot. And in many cases, not all, in some cases it is, but in many cases it's not about our kids being defiant or rejecting what we believe in. But it's more of an issue of they don't understand. And they don't understand because guess who else doesn't understand? We parents don't. We don't get why we do the certain things that we do and the rules that we have. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about some of the different rules that are out there and why they're out there. So first off, before we do that, I want to jump to a totally new idea. I want to throw down just kind of a quick look at a screen capture here that's going to kind of help elucidate why is it that we come up with rules. There's three different parts of rule making, and we're going to talk about rules as a very small part of rule making. If you focus only on rules in terms of rule making, most of the time you're going to struggle, if not fail. So we're going to talk about what other things do you need to develop before you even start talking about rules, not only in your family, but also like we've talked about in previous podcasts, in your classroom if you're a teacher. Why is it that you need to sit down and think about some other things before you get down to setting the rules in your homes and in your classrooms or in your businesses that you work in with your employees? So let's jump to that screen. Let's jump to that screen capture right now. Okay, so guys, whenever we do this, whenever we talk about building morals and values, the first thing that I want you to imagine is that pretend we're building a house. Now, guys, I know what I'm about to do is kind of cliche, a little bit corny, but follow with me. It helps people understand there's a little bit of difference than just making the rules when it comes to rule setting. So how do we get to those work? So imagine when you're building a house. What's the very first thing that you put down? You guys got it. I guarantee you guys guessed it. First thing you do is you put down your foundation, right? What does a foundation do when you're building a house, right? This is the thing that's the most important. It's the bedrock, the very fundamental part of what makes everything else in a house exist and work, right? That's the very first thing that's going to go down for you is your foundation. Put the foundation down. What is that in all of this? When it comes to rule setting and all that other good jazz, these are what your foundation is. Simply this right here. That simple word, morals. What are morals? Forgive the, looks like the third grade edition of that morals word there. But what are morals? A lot of people get freaked out at this. Oh, you're trying to push religious stuff on me. Absolutely not. Do you have to be religious to have morals? Absolutely not. An atheist has morals. Morals are fundamental beliefs about what is right and about what is wrong. Right? That's all those things are. Morals are just your beliefs about what is right and what is wrong. Every single person on the face of this planet has them. I don't care if you're you and me who are law-abiding citizens or if it's Ted Bundy. Everybody has morals. Now, some of them are screwed up. Some of them are very unhealthy and whack-delicious, but everybody has morals, right? So, fundamental part, first thing you have to do is decide what your morals are in your house. So one of your morals might be, let's take a common one that I hear a lot. That's also one of contention for a lot of families. We don't yell in our house to get what we want. That is a moral. fundamental belief that we do not yell at each other to get what we want, right? That's a moral belief. So the next part whenever you build a house is what do you got to put up? This is a retarded house, guys. Just bear with me here. What's the next thing you put up? The walls, right? What do the walls do, right? They protect from the things around it, and they help support what? The big top stuff, right? That's the roof. We'll get to what that is. So what are your walls? Now forgive the sideways writing of this here, but the walls are simply this. Oh, whoops, that's supposed to be U. There we go. I really do know how to spell, I swear. And that's your values. So what are values and how are they different from morals? Remember, morals, what's right, what's wrong. Values are simply this. Those are the morals that you have, the things that you believe, that you put into practice. So, moral in your household, we do not yell to get what we want. So that next time that you come home, you're tired, you're wiped out, the bills were a lot higher than you ever expected to be, your kids are whining and crying and screaming, and your wives need to talk to you, and you just wish that you could sit down and kick back and relax for a little bit, and you're so wound up, and let me tell you, the pressure's about to crack, but instead, you just take a minute, you listen to everybody, you calm yourself down, you cool off, and you get back in there, and you do what you need to do. Moral said, we don't yell to get what we want. Value, put it into practice, right? But more often than not, in my household as well, guys, I raise my hand to this just as much as anybody. We have the morals that we believe, right? We say we don't yell to get what we want. We tell our kids, you don't yell at each other to get what you want. But what happens the minute that ever we're frustrated and all that big thing happens and it's built up, blah, 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 and all the other things go on, and I snap and I look at my son and I say, Grant, shut up! Right? Is that a value? No. It is no longer a valuable. I've heard people say, well, Trey, it's still valuable to it. Not enough to put it into practice, apparently. Guys, I am not pointing fingers at this nearly as much as I am accepting those three fingers that are pointing back at me. I struggle with this just as much as any other parent. Sometimes when we're not careful, we have morals that we don't put into practice, right? For whatever reason, maybe we're stressed, etc., etc. Those are the values. And then last, what do you got to have when you build your house? Right? You got to have your nice little roof. What does a roof do to a house? It protects it, it keeps the elements out, all those other good things that it does, right? That's what a roof does. That's the last part of this equation. Those are your rules right there. The rules are everything that you put together that helps protect all this other stuff right here, right? The rules are those things that you set up to say, we have a rule in our house that you do not yell to yank a toy to get a toy from somebody else. You do not scream at somebody to try to get a toy from somebody else. What is that doing? That's helping enforce and make these values happen for our kids while they're protecting these morals that we believe about not yelling to get what we want. Here's the problem that many, many parents run into, myself included in this, is that often we're real shaky right here. Imagine this. What if you've got walls that are termite infested? What if you have beams that are rotted and are weak? What happens over time? This collapses. This falls down, right? And that's the issue that most parents are dealing with today, is they have wonderful rules built around really great morals, but they don't practice them. Or, in a lot of cases, they understand there's some moral connection here, they practice it themselves, but they don't really know why it is that they have these rules. They can't trace it backwards. They know that they have this rule that mom and dad said, which was, you need to be home for curfew by midnight, right? They do that, but they often don't know why do they practice it. What does it tie back to this? Now you imagine the curious teen who wants an answer to everything says, why do I have to be in by midnight? And then the answer is, well, because I said so, right? And how ridiculous that is. We would never accept that from a boss, right? So then that weakens these values as to why we practice them, and then often the entire household comes crashing down. So we've got to be able to balance these three things. We've got to know what our morals are, our beliefs about what's right or wrong. We've got to be able to practice those things and put them into practice, because if we can't, our kids won't either. That's a promise. And then last, we set up rules to help protect all of these other things in our household. The kid says, man, why do we have to have rules? The reason for that is because we are attempting to protect them. So when kids don't feel like they get this level of protection, when they don't feel like they get these things explained to them, when they're not explained to them that we have those rules that we practice those rules. And that's one of the most important parts. When we're not practicing these rules as parents, the rest of this stuff rarely ever works. So if we're not practicing those rules, and we haven't told them why those fundamental moral beliefs are out there, kids have a tendency to grow up, they're confused, they don't understand, and they typically have a tendency to go bonkers on us. And so it's incredibly important to make sure that we're explaining to our kids all these different things. They get, like I said, they get confused. The beautiful thing is, some of you guys are like, man, Trey, I haven't done that very well. What now? Don't fret. The bottom line is, and I've seen this in so many cases, kids can be taught this stuff very easily. Very, very easily. It also has been shown that the morals that we teach our kids when they're young, I was just reading an article on this a couple days ago, it was amazing. When kids are explaining moral beliefs when they're young, even if they twist off and they go nuts, berserk, bonkers face, and they go out there and they do everything they're not supposed to, we parents are like, man, we've done a horrible job with them. Studies have shown that kids will come back to those ultimate morals that we have taught them. So these are the things that residually will remain with our kids years into the future. So it's very important to make sure that we give our kids these things. Where do kids get most of their morals from? I'm going to jump through some of the top few places that I can think of the most. Number one is parents. Think about it. I mean, your kids want to know what you think. There was an article, I've quoted it a couple of times in here on these podcasts, but they did an article where they asked kids where they wanted to learn about sex about. Can you guess what the number one place they wanted to learn about it from? They wanted to learn about sex from you as parents. They wanted to learn about sex from you. Out of those that said that the number one that they wish they could learn about sex from being parents, can y'all even guess how many it was that actually had learned about it? Less than 25%. That means 1 out of 4 kids. Out of 4 kids who wanted to learn about sex from you, only 1 of them actually did. So kids want to know what you think about topics, even though they may act gross or weirded out. Oh, I don't want to talk about sex with you. They really do. They really do in most cases. Don't get me wrong, there's some kids out there whose relationships with their parents are not strong enough and they really don't. I'm not saying those kids don't exist, but the bottom line is most kids want to know what you think about it as parents. So kids get their moral development from you guys, number one. Second off, they're going to get it from extended family. This could be grandparents, aunts, uncles, anybody that they come in contact with that's family that's not directly you guys. One of my favorites is they'll often get them from their brothers and sisters. You say, no, wait a second, how do they get it from their brothers and sisters? Haven't you ever seen your kid when they're saying, you better not do that, you're going to be in trouble with mom? That is the impartation of morals right there, and I love that one. They're going to get it from their friends. The hard part about being a parent that most of us acknowledge is that typically those first few years of life, who's number one with a kid? It's typically us. But as they get older, guess who becomes number one in their lives? Typically like around the ages of 12, 13, 14. They're friends, right? So it's very, very important that we build our kids up. It's very important that we give them good moral development because people, and this is human nature for us adults as well, we have a tendency to pick people as friends who are exactly like, guess who? Us. And if we are making bad choices and we are doing dumb stuff, we pick friends that do the exact same thing, and then guess what happens? You get in that spiral downwards. It's no bueno, right? It's not a bueno thing. And the other one, guys, that let's be honest, that I'm seeing is the influence by media. I don't know if you guys have ever stopped and played Grand Theft Auto like San Andreas and some of those new faults, but let's be honest, media, some of the songs that are out there, super catchy, and I love them. But they have horrible messages to them. There's a song I was dancing with my little 8 and 10 and 13-year-old nieces about a year or so ago, and it was done by an artist called, maybe I don't know if I can say his name on these, but it was called Superman Dat Ho, and I'll let you do the research on that. If you ever get a chance, go to UrbanDictionary.com and look up what it means to Superman a hoe. And I'm just saying, I will no longer dance to that song. And I'm not one of those weird, all you can ever listen to is just spiritual Christian music. I'm not one of those guys. But even that song, I was like, oh, no, we ain't listen to that song no more. But check that song out, and kids are dancing to these things. Most of the time when kids, guys, I've talked with the kids, I've visited with them, and in almost every single case, they're not listening to them because of the message. So stand firm, you can relax a little bit. They're not listening to the music because they're really going to go grab their Glock and start shooting up a bunch of gang members. They listen to it in most cases just because it's catchy, because other people are listening to it, those kinds of things. So don't freak out. But the media is influencing our kids whether we want to or not. Next off is the spiritual and religious and church organizations are influencing our kiddos. Truthfully, if you think about Ten Commandments, what is that? The Ten Commandments is just a giant moral right and wrong list. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not, all those thou shalt nots, all those are designed to do is just to help give an idea of morals, what are right and what are wrong. Take a look at the Bible. The Bible is filled full of people who had morals that didn't put them as a value, right? So, anyway, an important piece to that to know. So I want to go real quick over just how do we establish family rules. Sorry, I've got my notes page over here propped up that I've got to go to. So how do we set up family rules? Let's just kind of talk about some basic things. You can do this in your classroom as a teacher. Remember that as well. This can also be very, very integral in doing this. Number one, get everybody to be a part of it. Why would you do that? It's called buy-in. I want you to imagine that you're... let's say you're a worker at Walmart, right? And you have a particular part, a section of store, maybe it's the electronics department. It's your department, right? And you run it. And your head boss comes in and says, "Hey, we're about to make some changes, and we're going to change all this up, and I need you to figure these, read these books, and then just work it out for me, okay?" And then walks off, right? Come back the next day, everything's been changed up. Are you going to be more or less resistant this way? Most people, I think, are going to be less resistant. I'm not saying they're going to be jerks about it, but they're going to be less resistant because there's no buy-in to it, right? But imagine this. Imagine that same boss comes up to you and says, "Hey, listen, we need to redo the electronic department. We really need some feedback. I need you to come, if you're all right with it, to come and give us some feedback on what you think that we can do." You sit in on the meeting, you throw out ideas, they love them, and then you come back the next day and it's been redone, and you can see all of the things that you suggested. That was my idea. That was my idea. Are you more or less likely to be resistant? Probably less likely. You're going to be more compliant. Why is that? Because there's some ownership to it. There's pieces of those things that are in your section, your department now that you're like, yeah, that's my idea. And when things are a part of ours, we're much more likely to do them. We give our kids certain toys that are theirs, that they don't have to share if they don't want to. Why do we do that? It's not trying to teach them to be stingy. It's not trying to teach them to be selfish. But it's so that way they have ownership of certain things. And whenever they have ownership to them, I watch my 5-year-old take better care of her Leap Pad than I watch 13, 14, 16, 18-year-olds take care of their DS Lites. It's just the way it is. Anyway. So kids need buy-in. So number one, get everybody involved with it. It's very, very important. Next off, if there's an issue that's been happening, like front doors being left open when people are going outside, and during the Texas summers here, when that happens, that costs you some money because that's all that cool air that has an easy direct access out of that door, right? So next off, share the issue. Okay, we're having a problem with the doors getting left open. We are having a problem with... younger brother is going in older sister's room and taking iPod out without asking permission, right? Whatever it is, share the issue. Get specific with it. Don't just say, "Little Jack has been disrespecting Molly." Get specific, because what the heck does disrespect mean? I guarantee you what it means to you does not mean the same to me, and it dang sure doesn't do a kid any good to give him a big giant blanket word of respect if you're not going to tell him exactly what it is that's disrespectful. So tell them, what is disrespectful? It is disrespectful when you go in Molly's room and you take her iPod without asking first, right? Maybe that goes back to that moral belief of we don't take things without asking permission first, right? I always recommend make a large sheet of paper. Take a large sheet of paper and divide it into 2 different columns. Let's do a little screenshot for that. Okay, so what I recommend that you guys do is get yourself just a piece of paper of some sort. What you're going to do is you're going to be putting your rules down. So just pretend like this is your standard yellow legal pad or something like that right here, right? What you're going to do is you're going to divide this bad boy into 2 columns. Just like this. Over here you're going to have what's okay and what's not okay. So this is just my... This is just my shorthand. So okay and not, right? Which stands for not okay. I've heard some of the different ones that I've heard used. they talk about the do's and do nots, or rules and anti-rules. I've heard families do a lot of very clever stuff with this, but the bottom line is put down what is okay and what is not okay. And so what's going to happen is over here you're going to put what is the okay rule to do, and then over here is what's not okay. So let's take things without asking, right? So this is where you're going to write down take things without asking. Over here, you've got to put what is okay to do. So ask permission before taking iPod. This is essential. This right here, guys, is the most essential part that we tend to have a tendency to miss. It is not good enough just to tell your kids, don't do this anymore. And you've always got to end on what is okay for your kids to do. I'm going to make this obnoxious because I need you guys to snag this, because I'm trying to save you guys some hair pullage for your parenting. Make sure you're telling your kids what is okay. If you're going to tell them don't do something, you're going to give them a vacuum of something that now they've got to fill with something else. In most cases, especially when they're younger, they're going to pick something else that they're going to try to put in this okay category that you're not going to like. So go ahead and just tell them what's okay, what's not okay to do, or what is okay to do. So if they walk out the door and they leave the door open, you put what is not okay is leaving the door open when you walk out during the summer. What is okay, closing the door behind you, or making sure that the screen door is latched, or making sure that the storm door closes all the way. Let your kids know what is okay. They absolutely need to do that. Remember, have your kid be a part of picking these rules as well. Why is that? It all goes back to the same thing again. The more that they have bought into this, the more likely they are to do it. So have your kid be a part of all of this as well. Have them buy into checking these doodads right here. It's very, very important. And have them be a part of making these. Keep these rules as simple as you can. Do not make them complex, like make sure that when you come home you immediately take your backpack and you place it at 90-degree corners at the edge of the footstool, and then walk in and then come and get a snack out of the basket. Make sure the basket is pushed right. Don't make it too complicated. Why? I want you guys to think about your little kids, even your teenagers. You give a teenager a 15-point rule set, what's probably going to happen? They're going to fail. They're going to screw up. They're not going to make it, right? Which is not what we want as parents. So make sure that you keep your rules very simple and keep them very, very specific. Make them very nice and easy. I recommend make sure that you try to keep around 7 or so rules. Even less is fine. If it goes down to 5 rules, I recommend keep your rule list as low as possible. You tell me why. Well, the reason is because the more rules that you give a kid, the more opportunities that you can be giving them to screw up. So keep the rules as simple as possible and learn how to flex on those other things. Try to keep them morals with good reasons as to why we practice them too. That'll help pay you off later. I always recommend, and especially at this point, have your kid be a part of picking. Have them pick what are the consequences that they get for each one of these. If they do not do what we want, or they do what is not okay, right, what's the consequence for that? And have them pick it. You will be surprised. The kids will pick some of the hardest, most difficult punishments they can come up with themselves for this right here. But then also, have them pick what should be the good consequence for that. Remember, we talked last week, we talked the last podcast that positive reinforcement parenting, it makes it more advantageous for them to do it right than to do it wrong. So help them establish what makes this lucrative for them, what makes this good, and then we can start moving them over to the motivations why later. And then I always recommend update yourself on these rules. Sit down with the family again. You're going to set rules of maybe 7, 8 o'clock bedtimes for your kids that are young, that as they get older, it's not going to be nearly as big a deal anymore. So make sure, take the time, hold regular meetings, and then reevaluate these right here. So that's it right there, guys. Just remember these simple things. Number 1, identify exactly what it is with your kid. Be specific as to exactly what is bothering you. Number 2, every time that you say that's not okay to do, what do you always need to fill it back in with? You need to fill that power vacuum, right, with something that that needs to be done. Studies have shown over and over and over that kids do better if we take away something we tell them we don't want them to do. They just do better if we fill it. And so remember, it's always easier to change a behavior than it is to try to take one completely. So remember those few short things. And these things right here can work for you not only in your households, but again for you teachers in your classrooms, for you men or women who lead and organize and direct people in your business. These principles work for everybody. So I recommend take time, take a look at them, and see if you can get them implemented in there. Guys, thank you so much for being on today. As always, I stand at awe as I watch the analytics software and I analyze the different hits that we're getting. I'm amazed at how many parents are stepping up to the plate and saying, I know there's a better way to do this, and I'm willing to snag that information. Let me tell you, that's what makes good parents. That's the defining thing that separates you guys from good parents from those who are just not ready to be, and that's that you're stepping up to the plate and you're getting that information. I cannot tell you how much I admire you guys for that. Thank y'all for showing up. If you guys would consider joining me on Facebook, you can like me on Facebook or Twitter through the website here. Also, guys, consider becoming a member, and that helps me support what I'm doing and keeping this podcast up and running. If you guys think that you're getting 60 cents an episode from what you're doing here, just consider jumping on and becoming a member with us. You will get full exclusive access to any of the new material that comes out with me and any new books that I'm writing and kicking out. So, guys, as always, I appreciate you. Remember, it's all about the relationships, and I look forward to seeing you guys at our next episode. Have a good one.